Ibrahim Fraihat is an Associate Professor of Conflict Resolution at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies and joins me in the studio once again. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
The ceasefire is holding tentatively. We're sort of holding our breath over the scenario. How important is it for it to hold? Because if you can't hold a ceasefire for humanitarian needs, it poses a whole range of questions about talks scheduled for the end of January.
There is no doubt that this is a major breakthrough in the conflict in Yemen, because for one important reason, that this is the first time in 4 years we are seeing some sort of an agreement between the two parties. However, as you know, this is an agreement over a humanitarian cause, not a political cause. So the politics has not been tested so far in this conflict, and we are testing now is to see to what extent the parties will work together on trying to avoid a humanitarian disaster that's for Yemen if this fighting continues. So despite it is a humanitarian agreement, it is important because it's the first time in 4 years.
Indeed, there are no UN troops, though this whole deal has been brokered by the UN, but there will be UN observers. How important is it for retired Major Patrick Cammaert to get his personnel on the ground and be able to monitor and try and maintain the peace between the parties, though it is on very shaky ground?
From a sustainability point of view, it's important that the agreement emphasize that who is going to be administrating the Hodeidah port will be the Yemenis, the local forces themselves. So again, this is for sustainability. This is great news because it's the Yemenis, the locals who own the implementation of this agreement, and they will be able to run this for the future. However, this comes as a package because it raises question to what extent the locals can be neutralized and not be polarized by the parties, by the Houthis and by the government. This is not easy because they will always be accused by this party or the other party that they have favorism. And if we have UN troops, this will give better chances for the agreement to succeed and to be implemented because they're externals, they're outside this conflict, and they can maintain their independence from the two parties while the locals remain vulnerable to the polarization and the pressure that comes from the two parties.
Senior UN officials would perhaps not want to entrench their troops into a conflict like this right now until they can really perhaps fathom how serious the sides are into coming to some sort of negotiated peace deal, should there be those talks in January. How important is this period in terms of leading up to those talks, in seeing how sincere the sides are to wanting those talks at the end of January? Because it only takes one shooting, one missile to be launched, and
yes,
it's all over.
Yes. There are many benefits for this humanitarian ceasefire to succeed that will help the political process later in January. The very first major one is that this is going to be, if it succeeds, confidence-building measures will be built between the two parties, because then it's not only about the statements, it's about the actions. And that if the two parties demonstrate that they are willing to deliver on their promises and on what they signed for, then we are building some sort of confidence-building measures between the two parties. Let's not forget that for the first time also happening that the government representative and the Houthis representative in Sweden, they were shaking hands and they were promising that things will change. So in terms of confidence-building measures, I think this is good. But and the other one is that this will give us, the two parties, something that they can build on for January. And that's why it's important for this to succeed until January talks happen.
Well, we shall see what does happen. For the moment, Ibrahim Fraihat from the Doha Institute. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.